and I'm your host. I'm Muvunyi. Today, we have an interesting topic. We are going to be reviewing a book that will be launched on 21st this month, and I am honored to be with the author of the book, Reverend Dr. Emmanuel Murangira. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a joy for me. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with you, and it's an honor to to have our first conversation here with your book, Economics at the Cross.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. You wanted to say something?
No, I said thank you.
Welcome. So this book, Economics at the Cross, Divine Economics of Small Things, has been written by Dr. Emmanuel Murangira. If you're a Christian and you've ever wondered how your money or how your economy translates to your Christian faith, or how these two work together, if you've ever wondered how, the principles of economics that we study at school, which, according to Dr. Murangira, seem to contradict the principles of economics from the Bible. He's going to be shedding more light on that. But if you have ever wondered about that, if you have never wondered about it because you've never explored the comparison between the two, you're going to have to listen more to this conversation. And you allow me to start by asking him to introduce himself to some of you that might be seeing him for the first time.
Thank you, Vital. My name is Emmanuel Murangira. I'm a married man. I have a wife and 2 children. And I'm also a pastor. I pastor a church in Kabuga, in the Anglican Church of Rwanda. I'm a senior pastor at Kabuga Parish. I also work for an organization, a Christian organization known as Tear Fund. And Tear Fund is a Christian organization founded in the late 1960s. And it works to end poverty, working with the church and Christian organizations to reach out to communities. And our mission is to follow Jesus where the need is greatest. And that's what we do.
Thank you. Since the title of the book is a bit difficult to understand, and one would wonder why someone would put these two words together, economics and the cross. He just gave you a brief introduction of himself, and you might wonder who is this person talking about economics and talking about the cross. I'll give you a bit of who he is so that you may understand that this person that is talking about this is not another pastor that has just read the Bible last night, and the morning he thought he could write about economics and, make some assumptions. So you allow me to give you some detailed introduction or detailed bio of Dr. Emmanuel Murangira. And if I was to summarize his bio, because it's very, very huge, if I would summarize it, I would put it in, let's say, 3 categories. I would describe him in 3 categories. 1, he's an economist. Dr. Murangira is an economist who's been doing this for over 32 years. Actually, it must be more than that because he didn't finish his bachelor's in 1994. But his experience, at least on most of the social media that I checked, he says he's been into this for over 32 years. So, as I just mentioned, he holds a bachelor's in economics that he obtained from the University of Nairobi, from Kenya. And he also did a Master's of Arts in Development Economics in the Netherlands from the International Institute of Social Studies. And he also has a PhD in behavioral economics that he obtained from Germany, from the Martin Luther University of Halle-Wittenberg. I'm not sure that I pronounced that right, but
you're not German.
Yeah. But he's not just an economist that has gone to school and studied these things. He's been applying economics all his life. He's done entrepreneurship. He started some companies. He's worked for some big companies. And as he just mentioned, he's also been in development economics. He's working with an international non-government organization. But he's not just an entrepreneur, and maybe I'll keep going back to some of these things as I ask him questions. But he's not just an economist, he's also a theologian. So I checked some other, because he's not just a theologian and an economist, he's also an author of many books. One of the books I checked on online, I realized that the publishers, something I didn't know, but the publishers has said he is doing, or probably has already finished, a doctorate or a PhD in, just give me a second. He's doing a PhD in transformational theology with the Oxford Center for Religious and Public Life in the United Kingdom. He also holds a postgraduate diploma from Westfield Lutheran House of Theology, which is a part of the Cambridge Theological Federation, and he's been a pastor for a very, very long time. I love to brag that he was the longest serving youth pastor at my church, and he's now also serving in Anglican Church, but he's also serving with many other Christian denominations. He's preached and impacted in Lutheran, Anglican, Free Evangelical churches in Rwanda, in East Africa, and in many other places. So as we get into this, because actually even with the person that wrote his foreword says that as soon as you read the two words that are key in this title of the book, you would be puzzled. You would be asking yourself, what is this man trying to do, putting economics at the cross? And since I can now trust that you know he's a great economist and also a theologian, I will ask you to assume with me that he knows what he's talking about. So I will start with asking him the kind of question that Dr. Antonio Taisile, who wrote his foreword, asked. And of course, Antoine provides his understanding of how he answers the question, but I want to listen to the perspective of the author. So I'll read on the first page of the foreword, which is page X. Antoine writes and says, "Economics at the cross, is this not a blasphemy, a profanation, a contradiction to the teaching of the Bible? At first glance, placing economics at the foot of the cross may seem contradictory to biblical teaching. Many Christian traditions, particularly those shaped by Puritan sensibilities, treat wealth with suspicion and view it as a spiritual obstacle to the whole journey to heaven." And I will stop from there and ask Dr. Murangira, why on earth would you want to offend everybody by putting economics at the cross?
Actually, it's not offending everybody, it's that everybody has offended everybody. I think one is that economics did not just begin with people, because if we talk about economics, we are talking about oikonomia, or what they call it in Greek. And it did not just start when Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations. There was an economy already. So it is, I find it a misnomer to actually say, to actually attribute Adam Smith, to attribute foundations of economics to Adam Smith or any other. It's actually, it doesn't make sense, because then it assumes that the economy only happened after Adam Smith wrote The Wealth of Nations, because that wealth was there, that economy existed, so it was already there. And the question here is, who created that economy? How did that economy come about? Now, there are so many ways that people talk about creation. When we bring up the word creation, there are so many ways that people approach it. But when we talk about economics and faith, then it's one thing. It's to recognize that the God who created the universe, the God who spoke the universe, the God who spoke into existence, everything into existence, was the beginning and the author of the economy. And therefore, talking about economics on the cross is actually not blasphemy. It's bringing economics into perspective. it's bringing economics into its natural place, and to actually sanitize it of its secularization, which has created scarcity in what we know to be a place of plenty.
Interesting. There's something you said in the book. As I was reading, I had known the roots of the word economics when I did my introduction to economics, and I just thought this is a root of economics, but I didn't see how that fits into my life. And when you were challenging the idea of what we think, of who we think as an economist, I said you're an economist, and I'm sure everybody was watching immediately thought this is a man that has so many theories that they have read and who's been analyzing lots of the economic things, systems that people analyze. And you seem to challenge that idea by saying that actually economics, from the root words, from the root, the original word is managing a household. Yes. And you said everybody is an economist.
Absolutely.
Would you please shed more light on that?
Because everybody participates in the economy, and everybody makes decisions in that economy. So that makes everyone an economist, because they have an understanding of the economy, and they are affected by that economy, and they make decisions in that economy. So that makes everyone an economist. Economists are not the people who actually do econometric models in class and out of class in consultants, firms, and all that. Economists are those people who actually understand what it means to exist in an economy and to make decisions in that economy and to participate in that economy. And it would be an unfair characterization to say that those people who are affected by the economy, who make decisions, everyday decisions in the economy, are not economists. They are economizing. They are managing. They are managing the household wealth. So they are actually economists.
So with that, would you say that this book is for everybody, or it's actually for the economics that you're calling to start a new theory of economics at the cross?
I'm not actually starting any new theory. All that is in this book is in all the other texts, other textbooks, other economics textbooks. All that I'm writing, all that I'm saying is offering a different perspective of what we have always known. And actually sometimes not even a different perspective. Actually talking about the same thing in a different way, in a way that I think is more rational, in the sense that it brings economics into its place, the real economy that people actually are able to identify with.
Yeah, I was asking that because if I went into a library and I read the word economics at the cross, I'll be like, I'm not an economist, I don't have to read this. So how does this economics at the cross concern me and someone else that you mentioned in the book that I want to actually go to? You mentioned someone called Mama Sarah.
Yes.
It seems like somehow she influenced, I don't know to what extent, but she kind of influenced your writing of this book and your new perspective, or actually the existing perspective, and she shed some light to it. So about, I was about to ask you, how did you first think of writing this book? I don't know if the idea started with Mama Sarah or she just exemplified it better, but I wanted you to share with us the story of Mama Sarah and how what we think of economists and what they think as economics might be different, especially those who are Christian economists, might be different from what the Bible teaches about economics.
Yeah, well, I started writing this book in 2013. And I started writing this book out of, I wouldn't say it was out of despair. I would say I was recording some of my experiences and questioning some of the things that I knew and how I understood them. And I wasn't questioning whether they are right or wrong, but I was actually questioning my understanding of those theories. I was questioning my understanding I was questioning of my understanding of the economic theories vis-a-vis my own faith. And it was at a time, if you I'm sure you have read the book, it was at a time when the world was experiencing a slowdown in the global economy. And this was due to, some economic phenomena that were happening in Europe and in the United States. And there was an economic slowdown that was general, and Europe was heavily affected. And being an economist, I found myself unprepared for it. I wasn't prepared for it because the housing bubble, for instance, in the US had lasted longer than I thought, despite being declared as having ended. But it was still affecting people, some of them my supporters. And some of those supporters were actually not even living in the United States, but they were already affected by the housing bubble in the US. And then add on to that, there was a slowdown in the European economy, in the European Union specifically, that affected everybody in Europe, especially in Western Europe at the time. And I started writing a book out of that desire to understand what is actually happening around me and all that. But also because I began to pray at that time for the funding that I did not have. I began to pray for the funding I did not have. I began to pray because that's the only thing that I could do. My supporters who gave me money did not have money. The foundations and trusts that were funding me did not have money. And the only recourse I had was prayer. And we mobilized prayer in the office and all that. And things began to happen. People without money began to give us money. And believe it or not, they did not die. They did not disappear from the face of the earth because they contributed money to our work. Yet they were actually suffering from this very economic phenomena that was happening in Western Europe. So when I was writing this book, I began to pick all the, I began to record everything that I came across, and I began to actually make sense of it. Then a few years ago, I began to put it together as a book, and then it slowed down, and I revived this at the beginning of last year, and started putting it together and formatting it into a book, and all the and I was all along I was reading the book and reading it against the Bible, trying to find out, reading my manuscript against the Bible, trying to find out, have I missed anything or have I mischaracterized anything? And I found that actually all the things that the Bible is also an economics book. It's also an economics textbook. From the beginning to the end, it talks about an economy of the kingdom. And we know kingdoms, and we know their economies, and we have had in history kingdoms that were very powerful, that conquered countries and all that. And they are no different from this kingdom. The only difference is that the king here is not in want, and his interest is not to loot the wealth of other nations. Is to actually share out that wealth to all his creation and to his people, basically.
So when you talk about the household bubble,
yeah,
for some people like myself, we may not understand, but we at least have an idea of the 2008
yeah,
economic crisis,
yeah,
world economic crisis. And of course, when you mentioned 2013, I also remembered that Rwanda was also going through some tough time.
yes,
And
it was affecting us actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was asking myself, when you thinking about your economic theories and realigning everything and calling your office to pray together,
yeah,
what was in your mind? What were you trying to do? Were you thinking that somehow prayer is going to solve these things? Because there is sort of two competing theories, at least in the contemporary understanding of Christianity in Africa, where people say some people are just going, some people think they can pray away or their bad economics or their misunderstanding of economics. And others will say we can fix everything without needing God. I wanted you to help us understand what was happening and what were you trying to do and how does actually these two things work together?
First of all, I want to address the issue of fixing everything without God. When you talk about fixing things, already, you're not fixing it by yourself. Because if you're fixing it by yourself, then it shouldn't have gone wrong. Because why then expend energy fixing something rather than making something that will not fail at some point? But most important for me is that the prayer was at that particular time, prayer was a last frontier. It was for me a last resort because I had not been employed to pray. I was working for a Christian organization, but my letter doesn't say go and pray.
Yeah.
It talked about me fundraising, mobilizing resources, and bringing money. And interestingly, my work needs money just like any other work. But what is interesting about the work that I do and the work that I've done in the last 18 years or so is that it requires money from other people, and it does not require me to make that money by investing what I get from those people. Mm-hmm. So I get grants, I spend them, and that's it. And people are not obliged to give me those grants as well. So, which should tell you that that's what is cut off. If I have to make trade-offs on what I'm going to spend on, charity is not the first one. I probably will spend on my child's school, on my house, on renovating a house and doing something else, and then charity may not get anything. But whether we like the word or not, the work we do depends on charitable giving. And people did not have money. What else was I going to do? I had traveled, and now I was actually scared of traveling again to Europe to raise money because there wasn't any. So I had to do something. I had to actually go down on my knees and ask God, what do I do now? And that's the beauty of working for a Christian organization. I don't think all the corporate jobs that I did, I would have gone down and knelt and prayed to God to help me make a profit for my shareholders. That would have been different altogether. But then again, here I was in a Christian organization, and the only thing that I found myself doing was prayer. And prayer was answered. And that prompted me to actually ask myself very many questions. So who's the owner of this economy? Who owns this? And, the Bible says the cattle on 1,000 hills are all his. And Psalm 24 tells us that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. It doesn't say the earth is the Lord's and some things in it. It says the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. And that to me made a lot of sense at the time. And I went down and prayed for all that God could give me from all his abundance. And that's when you go through this book, you'll find that I challenge the allocation of scarce resources. Because we live in a kingdom of abundance. Then how can we submit ourselves to perennial scarcity when we talk about the kingdom of abundance? So that's the difference. That's what led me to pray and pray some more. And 2013 passed, and 2014 was a bumper, and the other years as well. I have seen the program grow against all odds. We are still operational today, and there are a number of others, unfortunately, who are closed. It's a very unfortunate thing. But we are growing, and we hope to keep on growing. And the reason why we are growing is because we have come to know that what we are doing is not about us. It's about God and his people. And therefore, what we are doing it as stewards of what God has put in our hands, whether small or big, but mostly because we deal with all those small things. Yeah.
Yeah. To be honest with you, just like you mentioned, you read through this book. I read through this book and I was challenged that every stage of the book, every section that I read, one of the things that you just mentioned was how we have always defined economics as managing scarce resources. And then you're challenging us, telling us that that's a poor way of looking at things, at least not a Christian way of looking at things, because God is not a God of scarcity, he's God of abundance. And I will take you back to the story of Mama Sarah that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
You tell the story, and you say that, you know, with all the things that were going on at the time, sitting in a boardroom, very good one, with other economists trying to analyze all kinds of economic analysis that people make, and somehow you thought that you know, things were bad. If things were bad for rich people in the whole world, then it was even more. It was actually worse for the people that you were supporting. And you go to visit this lady somewhere in the village. You say in East Africa, and then, I don't know if you were with your friends, I don't remember the details of the story, but you get there and you sit with this lady in their sitting room, and she brings some 2 roasted maize to share with you, which went against everything you've been thinking about this whole meeting, because you thought this lady must be having nothing to eat. And you almost refused to eat the maize because you thought, I'm taking the least that she had. And she seemed to actually want you to eat the maize, because she believed that by by having you and probably other people share this, God was going to add more. And somehow you seem to suggest that this lady, Mama Sarah, and the lady in the Bible who gave a penny, they seem to understand economics more than the rest of the world understands. So please help us understand what you're trying to say.
I think they understand investment more than most people understand it. Because you see, when we have little, we tend to hoard the little that we have. Most people will do that. Now, when we talk about Mama Sarah, one of the reasons why I was actually not inclined to eat what she was giving us, it's because she had already told us that they only had 2 cobs of maize for that night. And they were in the middle of a drought. So I didn't feel it was right. But she also insisted, and she felt that it would have been wrong for us not to. And she actually, we ate the maize because of how she put it. She said, "This will be a blessing for me and for this home." Can you imagine that kind of faith? Yeah. And then there's the lady, the widow's mite in the Bible. She also did not. She was a widow and she had nothing. And widows in biblical Israel at the time lived a very precarious life. And she had nothing, literally nothing. And she brought all that she had and put it in an offering basket. And who says that she's done well? Christ himself says that she's done better than everybody else who was there, who was even wealthier. And it resonates very much with us. So you'd go to church, and you'd go to church even here, and you want to give the same offering as a lady who sells vegetables. So for her, when she gives 1,000, she's giving a lot of money. But you, who actually has revenue of 1 million or 2 million, when you give 1,000 like the lady who's selling vegetables, who is wealthy, who understands the economy, and especially the kingdom economy. And I believe that if you're already in the church and you're going to give an offering, then you must understand where you live and where you are. You must understand that you're in God's economy, you're in God's kingdom, you're in God's house,
And therefore, you are managing God's wealth. So you must understand. I mean, it's something that we are all called to understand. But beyond that, I mean, that sounds very much theological more than it sounds like economics. And that's because we want to dichotomize the two. But we are human beings. We are affected by the divine just as much as we are affected by the temporal. And it doesn't affect one person. Even those who do not believe in the divine are affected by the belief in the divine. If they don't have relatives who believe in the divine, they have other people they relate to who believe in the divine. You might not believe in God, but you're helping your relative who believes in God. Mm-hmm. Part of the allowance that you give them will be tithed, and part of it will be offered. So you are affected by the divine, and by that divine economy. So that's why this is not a book just for Christians. This is a book for everyone. And actually, I took care when I was writing it to make sure that it is not a textbook. It is a book that can be read by anyone, and a person who wants to internalize some of the ideas that are in there and be able to actually manage their own resources very well.
Yeah. There are so many ideas that you challenge in this book, the contemporary principles that you challenge, or you actually explain them more. One could say that you're challenging them, another one could say that you are explaining them deeper. And before I get the specifics of some of those that I wanted to ask you about, if one was to ask you the central message, the central idea of this book, what would you say it is?
The economics of the cross.
And what does that mean to a person passing by?
So the cross is a place where we go as Christians and we surrender. Mm-hmm. It's a place of surrender, but it's also a place. It's also a place of redemption. It's also a place of redemption. The economics at the cross is a redemption of economics. Is redeeming the economics. Is redeeming the idea of a secular economy that is based on scarcity, on allocating scarce resources. Because actually, that is the problem that we have in the world. Because even when we have plenty, we believe that that resources are scarce. And therefore we want to allocate them, and we allocate them to ourselves because we think they are scarce. And we forget that there are other people who should also be partaking in those resources. And one is because everybody is involved. Everybody around you is involved and has had a role in the resources that you mobilize. If it's not your parent who sent you to school, it's your neighbor who probably provided labor for your family. It's everybody who actually was involved in your upbringing, was involved in your well-being, was involved in your employment, was involved in your in bringing food to your neighborhood where you can actually go and buy it and all that. And that is the economy at work. That is the economy at work. And therefore, for us who believe, it is very important to remember that it's not just us. It's not just about us. It's about us, it's about God, it's about the other. Yeah.
I promised that I would add more to who Dr. Murangira is, because I'm about to ask him a question. And if he wasn't a leadership expert, I would think he's absolutely wrong on this one. Mm-hmm. So let me first tell you about Dr. Murangira and his leadership experience. First, he's an executive leadership coach. He's a certified executive leadership coach. He got his certification from CDI Africa. But he's also been in so many leadership roles. He just mentioned that he's working now with the TIA Fund, but he's also serving as a chairperson of EPC Africa. You can Google it out and find out what it is. He's worked as the first COO of Rwandair before it became Rwandair. It was Alliance Express Rwandair. He's also worked as the operation director for global travel and tour operator, firm in East Africa, marketing director for Shell downstream business in East Africa. He's done a lot of leadership. And this passage that he mentioned and I'm about to ask him about is a passage that is usually quoted when they talk about how we were born to lead, to rule over the earth. I'll go to page 11, if you could turn there with me. And you gave a fresh perspective of this Bible verse that I had never understood before. On page 11, you talk about recovering oikonomia. And there's these two words that you brought forth from Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. And you talk about the two words, the rule, which is I think rada, and subdue, which is kabash. And in fact, you argue that what God was doing when he was creating was economics. And what he asked Adam to do when he handed him over, when he handed the garden over to him, he was asking him to do economics. And so I don't want to read everything that's written here, but there's a way you explain it, and I would want you to give these people a foretaste of your book of what you explain to be economics in this passage of Genesis 11. No, Genesis 2.
Yeah, so after creating a human being, after creating man, as in a biblical language, God gave the man a job. He told him what he wanted him to do. And part of that was to rule over. Step number one in the economy, they were going to have control over the economy. And then they were to work, they were to produce, and they were to subdue or kabash, or to have dominion over all creation. But to have dominion over all creation here, it does not necessarily mean lording it over creation or destroying it. It actually means to look after creation. And that's what the subdue in the Bible actually means. It means, shepherd all creation. That's what it actually means. And therefore, God's creation itself was an economic act.
How?
He created an economic agent. That in itself was an economic act. But he also created other creation. He created animals and all that. And then, they were not just there. There was utility in what God created. He gave all plants to man to eat. And later on, he gave him some meat when it became necessary that human beings eat meat. So God was, the creation itself was an act, was an economic act. And the man stepped into an economy already created for him and became an economic agent. He worked the garden. Now, I don't think he was working the garden for nothing. I don't think it was just for entertainment. I think he was producing. That's what it actually means. He was producing. And was he producing for nothing? No, he was producing for consumption, for himself and for others. And there were not other people, but for himself, his wife, and then the rest of the creation.
And then you say that we have always understood economics to be managing our own resources. So that has pushed us to always try to accumulate more and more and more. And yes. you say, according to Genesis 1 and according to those two words, yeah. Actually it shouldn't be that we are managing our resources or we are accumulating more. We should actually be, we should be understanding economics as watching over someone else's resources. And you say that God created the heaven and the earth, it is his household.
Yeah.
So when we talk about economics from its original roots, we are not the owner of the household. We are actually looking over someone else's household. Please shed more light on that.
We did not create the economy, so that's one thing. So it's not our economy truly. It has an owner. Yeah, it has an owner. There is somebody who owns that economy. But we are there. We are using the economy. We are looking after the produce in the economy. We're looking after all the exchange in the economy and all that, what is happening in the economy. So we are responsible for the economic activity, and that's what actually that's what we actually in Christianity speak. That's what we call stewardship, and that's what the Bible actually calls stewardship. Looking after God's resources, looking after something that belongs to another person. But already there is value there. Mm-hmm. You know, we are not looking after something because, I mean, we are bored and we want to look after, we want something to do. We are looking after something because it has value. It has value in it. It has value with it. It is valuable. And therefore, it's part of God's economy. It must be valuable to the owner. It is also valuable to the steward, and it is also valuable to the end user. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I'll go to page 27, where you challenge you actually called it the idolatry of net worth.
Yes.
It was interesting. Maybe I'll read a short passage here. You said, page 27, that when a wealthy person, but yeah, I could start from there. When a wealthy person walks into a room, the atmosphere shifts. We listen more intently. We offer better seats. We laugh louder at their jokes. Why? Because we are worshipping their worth. Yep. That's a very heavy word to use. We are worshipping their worth. And you also say that this idolatry of the age, of the net worth, is a caste system as rigid as any ancient hierarchy. But instead of being based on bloodlines, it's based on the balance sheets. In this system, the billionaire is worth more than the teacher. The successful entrepreneur is worth more than the struggling artist. The person with the paid-off mortgage is worth more than the renter. Why would you want to change that?
Well, because it's because I think, with all due respect to every person, I think it's stupid. Yes, I think it's stupid. I think it takes away the human worth. That if I look at you just because you're driving a Rolls Royce and I meet someone else who's driving a 1982 Mercedes Benz that is worn out, that is old, I automatically think that that person is worthless, and the person who's driving a Rolls Royce, who has actually probably gotten that Rolls Royce through cheating and who has cheated for it, who has actually, or who has conned the bank to give him that Rolls Royce and all that. And I find that person much more worthy than a person who is, than a person who's living a modest life and who meets their own needs in every way, who is a good citizen.
Doesn't that go beyond, doesn't that go against the parable of talents? Oh, we misunderstand the parable of talents, where if you do right, you get more. Because I think when people say that, they are saying this person that has more has most likely worked harder than the other, or has, worked for it than the other. So if I say this person is worth more than this, it's because everyone is reaping what they sow.
I know people who work very, very hard, who wake up very early in the morning, at sunrise and go to bed at sunset, having been working all day. And I know people who actually work for an hour, not very hard, And they walk to the bank, and everybody in the bank stands up. I know all of those. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the human worth is pegged to the checkbook of the individual who walks in the bank and they all stand. What I want to say here is that every human being is worthy something. It has inherent worth in them. Yeah? So it's not to say that it's wrong to work. And we all mistake the parable of the talent. Yes, if you multiply, you get. That's true. But you also give. Yeah, you also give. And that's why the Bible tells us, bring tithe and offering in my house so that people may have food. Those who did not find jobs. But then there is the talent, but there are also people who Christ found there waiting, and he gave them a job and he paid them the same as those who started at 9 and they had started at 3.
Interesting. The same person that wrote this passage,
yes,
and is saying that the billionaire is not worth more than the school teacher.
Yes.
The same person that on page 71 is
yes.
talking about entrepreneurship.
Yes.
And giving a fresh understanding of entrepreneurship. Let me read what you
okay.
said on page 71 about entrepreneurship.
Yes.
In the vast ecosystem of the kingdom,
yes,
the word entrepreneur is often tragically mistranslated.
Mm-hmm.
To the secular ear, it sounds like opportunist.
Mm-hmm.
A person driven by the accumulation of capital, mm-hmm. the capture of market share, and the glory of the exit strategy. To the religious ear, it often sounds like worldliness, a necessary but secular vocation that funds the real ministry of the church. And you say both definitions are impoverished. And because you had said something about innovation earlier, actually on the same page, mm-hmm. you said micro and smaller innovations are the unsung heroes of economic progress. Mm-hmm. They are the increment changes that drive substantial advancement. When small business, there's I don't remember where you put the innovation, but you were saying that innovation is actually us expressing mm-hmm. God's image that He has put in us.
Yes.
Right? So, and one could wonder, how does this person who's saying that net worth is idolized, and a billionaire is not worth more than a school teacher, but he's also saying that innovation and entrepreneurship are actually godly things?
But who teaches? Who has the billionaire learned from?
Who has he learned
I perceive that the billionaire will have gone to school mm-hmm. and will have learned from the teacher. Mm-hmm. And the teacher will have taught him or her how to make money. And the teacher might not be as wealthy. So why would the billionaire be worthy more than the teacher? So that's the madness of net worth. Mm-hmm. We look at a person not as a person, but by their possession. And we forget that this is a person who owns that possession. And the possession is the means, not the end. Mm-hmm. You know? And the worst thing about human beings is that we focus on the means mostly and forget about the end. Mm-hmm. And yes, the billionaire might have worked hard, granted. And it's good that they have what they have. But it doesn't mean that they are better than the teacher. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean that if a teacher and a billionaire go to a wedding, for instance, a teacher should sit at the back while the billionaire sits at the front just because they have money. And that, believe it or not, it has an effect on the way we think, even in the kingdom economy. Because you see, the most important thing is not what we have, The most important thing is what we do with what we have. The entrepreneur is a problem solver, not an accumulator. And that's the difference. Because when we talk about the entrepreneur, we want to talk about the accumulator. So even a person who actually steals and hoards all the things that they hoard, they can lay a claim to entrepreneurship. They can't say they are enterprising. After all, they expend energy. After all, they sit down and plan. But then can we truly call them entrepreneurs? Are they enterprising or they destroy enterprise?
Interesting.
Yeah, because that's, you see, this book is not about raising new theories. It's about shedding a light on how we think about the economy that we live in. And I'm not saying that there are any theories that are wrong. What I'm actually saying here is how we look at them. Because it would be very wrong for me to sit here and say that utility rules. It doesn't. It doesn't. Because utility to you is not the same to me.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah.
So I could decide what is utilitarian to me, and that might be obnoxious to you.
So how would not looking at entrepreneurship or innovation as a way of accumulating wealth, how could it impact or change our way of approaching innovation and entrepreneurship?
I have no problem with wealth. I have no problem with wealth at all. I mean, that's actually, that has been my greatest fear, that people will actually think that I'm anti-wealth. I am pro-wealth. But what I'm actually saying is that we look at wealth from a wrong perspective. Because wealth exists to do something. It does not exist. It does not exist to be talked about. It does not exist to earn somebody praise. It exists to make life better for all who live in this world. Yeah.
Yeah, the Bible, the master of all things said that a person's value or dignity is not in how much they own. In the earth. I'm paraphrasing the words of Jesus,
yep.
Not being able to recall them properly. And when you're writing, especially towards the end of the book, you talked about how Jesus calls the wealthy to sell the wealth and follow him. He calls people not to just multiply what they have, but also to give it to others, to share with others. You challenge some of these contemporary ideas and you keep pushing us to look at them from the biblical perspective. And there is another idea that you brought in that I found very, very interesting, and which I think if you brought it forth on the table of many other economists, they could actually stone you. That's the title of chapter 7. He said it's investing in the age to come. And allow me to quote some words, a paragraph on this page 107. Sure. You say, we are living in a world that is obsessed with the short game. Wall Street trades on microseconds. Corporations plan for the quarter. Politicians plan for the election cycle. Even in our personal lives, we rarely plan beyond retirement. We treat death as an economic cliff, a point of final liquidation where the balance sheet goes to zero. But the gospel destroys this timeline. You said we are to invest in the age to come. I was saying that economists could shoot you because you're talking about an age that they don't even know if they are going to be able to make it. Why do you think it's so important for us to have a fresh understanding? Actually, Dr. Antoine Taisele, who wrote your foreword, said that this is a revolution. This is a revolutionary book that is going to challenge how we have always looked at life. So For a Christian, for a believer who's looking at you, and probably for an unbeliever too, who is watching this, why do you find it so important to tell them to invest in the age to come, and not in this one that they are in, and for their children and for their families?
Well, let me start with an unbeliever. They can't invest in a place where they are not. They're not in the kingdom of God, so they can't invest there. In essence, they have missed the bus. So let's talk about the believer now.
So this has nothing to do with an unbeliever. They have to first come into the kingdom before they can.
Absolutely. I mean, how can you invest in something you don't believe in? It's like telling me to go and buy shares in a company that I don't believe in. Or keep my money in a country, keep my money in some of the countries that we know that are failed states and have no banking system. You know? So if I don't know something, how then can I invest in it? So it's for an unbeliever, they can't invest in the world to come or in the age to come because they don't belong to it. They will not get to it. I know we are predisposed to, to be good Christians and to tell people that there is heaven, and yes, there is heaven, but it's not for everybody. Not everybody will end there. So for an unbeliever, they can't invest in a place where they are not. You'll end up not getting, just before I get to a believer, that reminds me of something. There were times when wealthy people in Africa, and some of them politicians and all, banked their money in Switzerland, but they were not living there. So they would die and their families would not have access to the money. Why? Because they did not live in Switzerland and they did not know about the money. And it's not just that, it's also other places. If you're sitting here and you send your money to Mauritius and you've never been there, well, good luck if you get it after death. But anyway, let's talk about believers now. Christ says, I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. And then at the end of that, at the end of Matthew chapter 25, towards the end actually, not at the end, towards the end, he says, come and inherit the kingdom of God because you did that. Yeah? Yeah. Because you did that, because of what you did. That is the investment that they're talking about. That if you are creating wealth and you are a Christian, then it should benefit the kingdom of God. And you will not be impoverished because you're benefiting the kingdom of God. Yeah. And by the way, I think I have been Christian long enough to know and to have seen that blessings are real, that God is real, that God's economy is actually real, that you invest in it and there are returns. And I can tell you about so many businessmen I know in this town who would tell you that. I can tell you about very many businessmen that I know in other countries. I travel a lot, as you know. I meet a lot of business people. I'm a member of the Christian Economic Forum, which is a global forum of Christian entrepreneurs and Christian scholars and economists. I'm a member of Christian Economics International, Christian Economist International. So I have met these people. And we all agree on one thing, that there is a divine economy. And that divine economy, and in that divine economy, there are some economic rules that we must follow.
Yeah. Thank you so much. The last one is going to be this. Why do you think a pastor, an entrepreneur, or anyone else who is a Christian who is doing whatever they are doing, what do you hope this book brings to them? What do you hope they pick out of this book?
I hope everyone who reads this book will learn to live. Will learn to live as a manager of God's household. I hope that everyone who picks up this book will know that they are stewards of God's resources. And if we could know that, we would solve a bulk of our problems. We will solve a bulk of our problems. The world is not poor because we lack resources. The world is poor because we have resources that we do not allocate properly, and then we make excuses and we say, the first excuse we make is that resources are scarce, and yet we are still siphoning those resources. Yeah.
Thank you so very much.
Thank
you
you
for this conversation.
Thank
to
you.
our viewers, this book will be available on 21st, that's next Saturday. You'll start to be able to buy them. And right here on this show, we'll tell you how you can buy this book. I'm sure they will be available in all the bookshops in Kigali. They'll also be available on Amazon. So you'll be able to buy one if you're here. You'll be able to buy them directly from the local shops. But if you're watching from Uganda, from any other place that is not Kigali, you can also be able to buy the book from Amazon. So I want to thank you so much for always tuning in to watch CNM Podcast, which we have renamed to Staying the Course, but under the same umbrella or under the same organization, Christ for the Nations Ministries. We thank you so much for always sharing your ideas. I hope you share the ideas on this book. I hope you let us know what it is that you found interesting or intriguing to you. And I hope that God blesses you to start living your life and managing your resources at the cross, because that's the premise of the book, is that you can be able to manage your resources at the cross. You can be able to surrender your economics at the cross. So have a very good evening and have a great week ahead.
Thank you.